Hello there, I'm Presley, and today I will be going over the events of and giving my overall thoughts on episode 23 of the Bleach 1000-Year Blood War. Now, this episode covers chapters 592 to 596, with the very beginning of 597 as well. So, just a little bit over 5 chapters. And now, the episode starts off where we left off last time, with the zombified Captain Hitsugaya showing up. We see several reactions from the people that are there. Of course, then we see Yumachika and Ikaku, and Yumachika attempts to use a Kido incantation, to which Ikaku warns him that it's not going to work. Of course, Captain Hitsugaya then slashes at where Ikaku and Yumachika are. A giant slash of ice. Of course, Ikaku attempts to move Yumachika out of the way. And when we see them again, after the dust has settled, we see where Yumachika is fine, but Ikaku, his leg is frozen. To which we then see Hitsugaya walk up behind him, stab him, and then slash Ikaku's back. Now, of course, this makes Yumachika furious. So, of course, he runs in to attack Hitsugaya. We see their blades clashing, and for a split second, we see where Yumachika starts to use his Shikai's true name instead of the fake name that he uses most of the time. Of course, Hitsugaya knees him in the gut, headbutts him, and then, of course, slashes him as he's falling backwards. Of course, then we see Mayuri, and he, of course, comments on the fact that Bambietta seemed to have a mind of her own. However, Hitsugaya seems to be moving on like pure instinct. He doesn't really seem to have a mind of his own in this state. Which, of course, leads him to assume that Hitsugaya was zombified while he was still alive. Of course, then we see Giselle, who confirms that Mayuri's assumption about Toshiro's zombification is correct. Of course, then we see Charlotte Coolhorn appear in front of Toshiro. We get a bit of talking, pretty much entirely on Charlotte's part, since, Hitsugaya is not really in a state right now to, be able to talk, obviously. Of course, they attempt to attack Hitsugaya. Mayuri states like, hey, don't do that, don't be foolish. But it's too late. We see Hitsugaya slash Charlotte, cutting off their hand. We see blood just spurting out everywhere. Of course, we have Mayuri talking to Toshiro for a bit. Before he ultimately states that, there are quite a few drugs that he would like to try on Toshiro while he's in this state. Of course, then the opening theme plays. Then, of course, we see Hitsugaya attempting to strike Mayuri several times. However, all of his slashes are being blocked. And ultimately, Mayuri mentions that the reason why this is happening is because he implanted a sensor in his Zanpakuto the other day, to where it's now been made to automatically block the strikes of any blade that comes within a certain radius of it. Of course, then Hitsugaya attempts to kick Mayuri, but Mayuri is able to stop his leg with this thin, purple disc-like substance appearing on his hand. And this comes off onto Hitsugaya's knee, and it ultimately explodes. Of course, then we see Hitsugaya unleash his Bankai, and he ends up freezing Mayuri, killing him. Then, of course, we see that it's immediately back to the moment where Mayuri stated that he has many drugs he would like to test on Toshiro while he's in this state. And, this confuses Toshiro. And we do actually have him stating, like, I've heard this before, what's going on? He unleashes his Bankai again, kills Mayuri again. Same thing repeats again. They're back to the conversation they were having a moment ago. Of course, Toshiro, he once again asks, what's going on? To which Mayuri responds that, it's interesting to see that he's starting to regain some of the functions of his brain. And, basically we have Mayuri explaining that this is the effects of one of his drugs that he's used on Toshiro. And basically, the way it functions is that anytime that Toshiro kills Mayuri, is that he's immediately sent back to the conversation they were having just a moment ago. And that the only way for him to, continue to move forward and not be repeatedly stuck in this loop of being sent back to that moment is, for him not to kill Mayuri. Of course, Mayuri does state that there's a serious side effect to this drug that occurs once you've gone through this loop 10 times, as we see Toshiro collapse. Stating that the part of your brain that controls your equilibrium goes completely numb for 30 seconds. We get a bit of talking back and forth for a bit. Mayuri stabs Toshiro with his Shikai. Then, of course, we see him administer a new drug into Toshiro's system. We hear Toshiro screaming in pain. We then, of course, see a zombified Kensei, Rose, and Rangiku all show up surrounding Mayuri. To which, of course, the 3 Arrancars that are still, able to move around and fight, immediately engage in a fight with them. Then, of course, we cut over to what is an entirely new fight in the Thousand Year Blood War. I mean, it's a fight that happened in the manga, but we did not get to see it. And now we're getting to see it, which is so cool. Where we see Byakuya going up against Nanana, Robert, and Candice. We see them going back and forth for a bit. We see Nanana send an attack flying at Byakuya. Byakuya ultimately is able to take him down. Candice attempts to then send an attack flying towards Byakuya, but he's able to take her down as well, leaving Robert as the last one there. And Robert, he's absorbing the Reishi around him. He's ready to send a full-out attack at Byakuya. He heads in close to him. Of course, then Byakuya unleashes his Bankai, Zenbone Zakura Kageyoshi. And, that takes down Robert. Of course, then we see Lil and Maninas, standing a bit away from where the battle just happened, commenting on how pathetic the other Sternritters were for losing. And, we have a bit of talking between these two characters for a bit. Of course, then we see Shuhei walking up to where Byakuya is. And, he states that, he already took down one. He's impressed that Byakuya took down 3 Sternritters. He walks up close to Byakuya, only for Byakuya to then have to block an attack of Shuhei's. And, of course, Byakuya asked, are you being manipulated by the enemy, or are you an enemy in disguise? And, of course, Shuhei ultimately ends up stating that, he was simply doing this all for someone named Pepe. And, of course, then we see Pepe, who is Sternritter L, the Love. He gives his big introduction speech and all that. He sends a heart-shaped beam towards Lil. She gets out of the way, but it does hit Maninas. Now she's being manipulated by Pepe as well. And, she just sends Lil flying, from hitting her. Of course, we see Byakuya and Shuhei going back and forth, exchanging strikes with each other. While we have Pepe off to the side, monologuing about love. Ultimately, Byakuya does, hit Shuhei in his stomach, which causes him to collapse to the ground. Pepe sends another heart-shaped blast flying towards Byakuya. He moves out of the way. It, just destroys an entire section of rubble near where he is. Of course, we then see Byakuya's Zanpakuto slash him, which is because it was hit by one of Pepe's blasts. Of course, Byakuya then throws his Zanpakuto off to the side. Then we see Shuhei get back up, and he grabs a hold of Zenbone Zakura. We see Byakuya having to dodge Shuhei's attacks, wondering what he can do to counter this. Of course, Pepe is able to land a blast onto Byakuya. It does nothing to him, though. Of course, then we see Pepe activate his Quincy Holy Form. He then sends an attack towards Byakuya, which impales him, which kind of looks like a chain of hearts woven together. However, before Pepe is able to use his Quincy Bone Arrow to shoot Byakuya, he is kicked in the face by none other than Kensei. Of course, Shuhei then rushes towards where Kensei is attempting to attack him, but Kensei immediately knocks him out. He then picks up Zenbone Zakura and hands it back to Byakuya. Of course, we then see Mayuri show up. Of course, we cut back to a bit before they all arrived here, and we see where Kinsey and Rose had been knocked out by the Arancars. And, we of course see Mayuri administer the same drug he's given Toshiro to them. Of course, Mayuri goes about stating how he has samples of every member of the Seirete's blood on file, and states how making a drug that would replace any foreign blood in their system with this new blood-like substance wasn't particularly difficult. Of course, Giselle asks Mayuri what he's talking about, and Mayuri states, well, your zombies become my zombies as a result of this. And then, of course, we see Mayuri stab Giselle. Of course, we have Mayuri and Byakuya talking for a bit, once we move back to the present. We then, of course, see Pepe, he sends a blast towards Kinsey, which hits him. However, it does not stop Kinsey from, of course, punching him in the face. And, Mayuri, of course, states that, his attacks aren't going to work on his zombies, because his zombies have no need for love. And, Kinsey's able to easily send Pepe flying. Then, of course, we see where Pepe has landed, and we see Lil approach him. And we see where Lil's jaw starts to expand, clearly indicating that she is going to consume Pepe. Then, of course, the ending theme plays, and then, of course, after the credits, we see Yhwach and Uryu and Yugrim arrive at the Royal Palace. And that's where the episode ends. Overall, I really enjoyed this episode. I thought it was really good. Now, the ending poem for this episode is from volume 66, from the perspective of Oetsu. I'm really glad that they decided to show the Byakuya and, the Senritas he fought actually fighting, instead of just showing the aftermath of that like they did in the manga. I think this was a great addition. I really liked it. Well, I think this is where I'm going to end the review. Thank you for watching. I hope you have an amazing week. I will see you in the next video. Bye.